talked about a difficult family situation that I was going through. And a number of you throughout the year came up to me and expressed your support. You offered condolences. You even invited me over for the holidays. And I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful for you all, for this community, to have so many people in this audience that I can call a friend. So I want to start by saying thank you so much for the support. It means the world to me. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, a year ago, I stood here just basking in the joy that Bitcoin was down 70%. And that I wouldn't have to listen to my smug brother-in-law, Ethan, just gloat over Thanksgiving. And sadly, Bitcoin is now up 70% from where it was a year ago. Now, it's still down 50% from its peak because of math. But do you think math is going to get in the way of Ethan's ego? I don't think so. Math will certainly not be the thing to get in the way of Ethan's ego. So what am I going to do about it? I'm going to have Thanksgiving with my wife's family this year. So it's all good. It's all good. We're just going to avoid the situation. There's a lot going on in the world. We've got conflicts between Israel and Gaza. We've got conflicts between Ukraine and Russia. We've got unprecedented, at least in my waking life, interest rates. They're higher than they've been in a really long time. Just constant clouds on the horizon for the economy. And as your MC, I asked myself, how do I weave all this together and properly introduce the economic forecast? And frankly, I struggled with it, right? It's a lot of complexity. So what did I do? I thought it was a perfect opportunity to turn to our robotic overlords and consult ChatGPT. So I'm going to read to you the introduction to the Central Coast Economic Forecast as written by ChatGPT. First, I'll start with the prompt that I used. Please, and yes, of course I said please because, again, there are future overlords. Write a 1-minute introduction for a 2023 economic forecast event that makes humorous references to pop culture events and trends from the past year, including the Barbie movie, Bitcoin, Nepo Baby, Ozempic, the 2024 presidential election, because at first it was spitting out 2022 election stuff. That was weird. Interest rates or pickleball. All right, so here we have a message from our robotic overlords. And I don't know why, but I always want to read this in a Seinfeld accent. I'm going to try to avoid it, but here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the most anticipated economic forecast event of 2023. It's been a wild year, hasn't it? I mean, between the Barbie movie sweeping the Oscars, who knew plastic could act so well, and the relentless rise and fall of Bitcoin, more twists and turns than a soap opera, we've had more drama than a Kardashian family reunion. This is 100% real. I am not messing with you. This is ChatGPT. Now, who can forget the Nepo Baby? I mean, it practically broke the internet. And speaking of breaking records, Ozempic seems to have supercharged the stock market like it's the hottest new superhero. It's made us all believe we can achieve economic greatness. Clearly doesn't know what Ozempic is. But wait, the real plot twist is yet to come, folks. The 2024 presidential election is right around the corner. And with candidates promising more economic shakeups than a roller coaster ride, we're in for some nail-biting times. And let's not forget about interest rates. They've been playing hide and seek like they're in a thriller movie, keeping us all on the edge of our seats. Will they go up? Will they go down? We're just here for the suspense. You can't write this stuff. It's so good. All right. Finally, we can't ignore the pickleball craze that's taken the nation by storm. It's a sport that's almost as volatile as the stock market. Who knew that a sport named after a pickle would become the next big thing? Will it have an impact on our economy? Only time will tell. So buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to dive into the wild and unpredictable world of economics in 2023. Our experts are here to help us make sense of it all and predict what the future holds. Get ready for a roller coaster of a year. Let's hear it for the robotic overlords. And for those of you that didn't clap, I would just remind you that they are watching. There are cameras in this room. So it was actually pretty good, right? And also really, really horrible. They managed to completely miss the boat on Nepo Baby and Ozempic, but they somehow managed to predict that the Barbie would sweep the Oscars. So stay tuned for that. Very suspicious. All right, let's get serious. We're going to start, as usual, with a lot of thank yous. There's a lot of people to thank because this event does not put on itself. It's run by a total volunteer board of the Central Coast Economic Forecast, all guided by the steady hand of two co-chairs this year. Co-chair Emily Reneau, Chief Philanthropy Officer for the Boys and Girls of Mid-Central Coast. You probably also know Emily from her time at the American Heart Association and as the former CEO of the Atascadero Chamber of Commerce. And her co-chair Jolie Ditmore, who's right there. Hi, Jolie. President of Bay Consultants, have both put in a huge amount of time to the organization. I love our agenda today, and I think it's a reflection of their thoughtfulness that they've put together for you all today. So please welcome co-chair of the board of the Central Coast Economic Forecast, Emily Reneau.
No. Now can you hear me? Yay! Okay, thank you, Ryan. We're so happy to have you back as MC. It says that in the script, but we really are happy to have you back. And good morning, everybody. Welcome, and thanks for joining us this morning. As Ryan said, I'm Emily Reneau, and I'm delighted to be the co-chair of the Central Coast Economic Forecast this year, along with Jolie Ditmore. It's amazing to be here with so many business and community leaders to learn from today's forecast. We have a fantastic program in store for you today, including an expanded SLO County Forecast. We're excited to have Dr. Chris Thornberg from Beacon Economics lead off the program with a thorough review of local economy. We're thrilled to include REACH this year. Melissa James will highlight local economic development efforts and job growth initiatives in several key industries. We're really grateful to REACH for their partnership and participation. To close out the local forecast, Jocelyn Brennan from the HRM Corp will share an update on countywide housing developments. We're excited to bring back 3 minutes to win it and introduce a new group of impressive entrepreneurs who will compete for a cash prize. A special thanks to our startups for their participation. To round out the morning, we'll welcome back Dr. Chris Thornberg back to the stage and share his no-holds-barred perspective on the state and national economies. Sorry about that. Before we dive into today's engaging program, I'd like to give a few thank yous. First and foremost, I want to sincerely thank all of our sponsors. The CCEF is 100% reliant on our sponsor dollars to make this event happen. So thank you for helping us provide our community with relevant and actionable economic data and analysis. In particular, I'd like to recognize our platinum sponsors: Amazon, Bank of America, Cal Poly, Dana Reserve, KSBY, and PG&E. Each of these platinum sponsors has recorded a short greeting to share with you today. So we thank Ed Shapui, Lisa Moore, and the incredible team at KSBY for producing these pieces, which will run throughout today's program. Behind the scenes, we also have help from our local chambers of commerce, who assisted with promoting the event. Thanks to Paso Robles and Templeton Chamber, Atascadero Chamber, South County Chamber, Morro Bay Chamber, and of course the SLO Chamber, whose staff and ambassadors also volunteered their time to greet all of you as you arrived today. Special thanks to our media sponsors. Thank you. Special thanks to our media sponsors, KSBY, New Times Media Group, and the SLO Tribune. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge, thank you. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge our board of directors. Each board member is a volunteer and has made great contributions to today's program. Please stand when I call your name. The officers, co-chair, Jolie Ditmore, Bay Consultants. Treasurer, Steve Harding, American Riviera Bank. Secretary, Maria Kelly, MM Kelly Consulting, LLC. Directors, Jocelyn, Brennan, HRM Corp. Eric Daniels from PG&E. Lisa Deutsch, 10 Over Studio. Jen Dunning from Cal Poly. Michelle McCovey-Good from T&S Structural. Judy Mahan, Cal Poly, CIE, and SBDC. Steve McCarty, McCarty Davis Commercial Real Estate. Wyatt Mello, Mello Group. Z Nakasha, Carmel and Nakasha LLP. Anthony Palazzo, Cal Poly. Bruce Ray, Revisum. Josh Tang, Amazon. Jeff Toma, Toma Electric, Inc. Mary Wikowski, Amazon. And Kara Wright from Farm Supply Company. I didn't see this anywhere in the script, but I'd also like to shout out to Stephanie Berteau, who's our executive director, and literally without her, this event would not happen. She makes us all look good on the board. And thanks to all of you, I'm honored to serve as co-chair. Now let's kick off this program and with a welcome from one of our platinum sponsors, Bank of America.
Hello, I'm Greg Bland, President of Bank of America San Luis Obispo region. On behalf of my Bank of America colleagues, thank you for joining us today. To help serve our local communities, Bank of America remains attentive to areas where we can direct the talent, innovation, and resources of our company. We invest in our community through partnerships including Reach of the Central Coast and Cal Poly CIE to help create higher wage jobs for our local workforce and increase economic prosperity through big thinking, bold action, and regional collaboration. We also take our work a step further by partnering with our business clients to help them expand and prosper, as well as serve individuals as they buy homes, save for retirement, or send their children off to college. I'm proud that Bank of America can help sponsor the Central Coast Economic Forecast, and I'm eager to learn from today's presenters. And now, on to the forecast.
All right, how about a round of applause for Bank of America? Thank you, Greg. Emily and Jolie, the Central Coast Economic Forecast Board would love to thank you for your year of service. So if you wouldn't mind standing just for a second so we can properly thank you both. Thank you so much for all the hard work. Thank you. All right, we are close, folks. A couple of housekeeping items before we jump in. Yes, we will email you the materials from today's presentation. You don't need to do anything. Just sit back and let it come to you. We are also recording today's event. So if you want to share this information with anyone, if you want to re-watch something, maybe how to use the restroom, that recording is actually going to be available to you as well, probably early next week. I also want to remind you, we got a packed program. We are not going to take a break. We have put buckets under your tables if you need them. I do want to just advise you, I was here for the Reptile Expo a couple of weeks ago, and the rumor is that a few of them got loose, so just be careful when you reach for the bucket. They do like dark places. So we are going to do Q&A. Now, if I could, I believe, get a slide up on the screen with that email address. ccefquestions@gmail.com. Shoot an email in the middle of the presentation while it's fresh. If you have a question, shoot it to ccefquestions@gmail.com. I'm going to receive those on my cell phone, and we are going to pose those questions to Chris at the end of the program. And lastly, but very importantly, there are going to be evaluation forms emailed to you after the event. We would very much like it if you could take a few minutes, complete those, and return it to us. It helps us continue to refine this event so that it serves you to the fullest. All right, without further ado, on to the program. Now, I don't know if you caught it, but we get Dr. Chris Thornberg twice today. We're in for a special treat, so he is going to both lead us off and bat cleanup today. For those of you who don't know Dr. Thornberg, he is the founding principal of Beacon Economics, a renowned economist with deep expertise in economic and revenue forecasting, regional economics, economic policy, labor, real estate markets. He's widely considered one of California's leading economists. He's been called many things throughout his career. Some of those things not to his face, but generally to his face, economic expert, trusted media commentator, audience favorite, right? But most of all, he likes being called Mr. Right. Yeah, so feel free to call him that after the event. He became nationally known for forecasting the subprime mortgage crash in 2007. He was one of the few economists on the record to predict the global economic recession that followed. He correctly called the V-shaped recovery coming out of COVID and all of that crazy stimulus, as well as the sharp hike in interest rates that we're seeing today. I do this sort of thing for a living. I'm with Wackerwell Partners. I spend a lot of time listening to economists. In fact, you might call me a little bit of a nerd. And I just want to say, you guys, we have a special treat in Chris Thornberg and Beacon. He is one of the more practical and pragmatic, he cuts through the noise, and has a really amazing track record at providing, I think, practical, helpful economic insight. So let's give it up for Dr. Chris Thornberg.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, for God's sake. Do you know what time I got up this morning? I'm going to try this one more time. Good morning. Oh, my God. I think this is getting close to my longest running presentation ever. We've been here for almost 50 years, something like that, maybe even more than that. Always thrilled to come back to my favorite part of the Central Coast to talk a little bit about what's going on in the world, as the case may be. As already noted, here we go. Okay. As already noted, I will be with you twice today. First part of the conversation, of course, is going to be about where we are right now. It's going to catch you up a little bit about what has happened over the course of the last year on top of the last bunch of years. And in particular, we're going to be focusing a little bit on this conversation about social narratives and economic realities. And I also want to talk about what's happening right here on the Central Coast in San Luis Obispo County itself. What are the ups? What are the downs? What are some of the challenges that are happening to this particular region? Now, we're going to end on one particular thought, which is going to be very important for understanding where we head next. Now, of course, we're going to come back at the end of all those other wonderful presentations. That's when we're going to dig into where things go from here, nationally, statewide, and of course, right here yet again in San Luis Obispo County. I also want to say through this presentation, you're going to see a few things. One of the things you're going to see here and there are going to be some quotes. We talked to a number of wonderful people. They're all listed up here. I won't go through them for the sake of time. It gave us a lot of wonderful insights. I wasn't able to use all their quotes in the presentation, but I did try to fit people in where I could. And at the very end of this presentation, in my second deck, when you get a copy of those slides, you'll find a little bit of a SWOT analysis we did on the basis of these interviews. This is something we kind of pulled together on the side, something to help, again, get your thoughts wrapped around what's happening right here on the Central Coast. Now, when I was with you last year talking about what was going on in the economy, of course, this is what we were looking at. You heard all this stuff about the economy is going to enter a recession. We're going to, it's a Wild E. Coyote moment. We're going to have a double dip, housing downturn. I love this one, the U.S. recession probability. 98% chance of a global recession. 98% chance. Now, to be clear, how do you know a macroeconomist has a sense of humor? They use a decimal point, okay? In other words, this is not a field of exactitude, if you will. And to be clear, the predictions of forecasters about the economy are incredibly poor. Anybody who says out loud, I have a 98% probability of anything happening in our macroeconomy is clearly lying to you or lying to themselves. Now, I got to tell you, what this all reminds me of is a famous quote from an old economic curmudgeon, John Kenneth Galbraith, a genius in the field, whose genius really lay in many ways sort of poking holes in many of the other, shall we say, greater aspirations of economists in the field. And what he said back in the day was the only function of economic forecasting is to make astrology look respectable. I'm a forecaster. I was hurt by this, but right now I completely understand where he's coming from. Now, of course, as last year we talked about this, we understand there's some pressures hitting our economy. Obviously, we had the big surge in prices. We had the decline in consumer confidence. The Fed got in the anti-inflation bandwagon. We're going to talk a lot about the Fed in the second half. And, of course, they've been driving interest rates up. With interest rates going up, they've gone up in a very specific way. And, of course, what they ended up doing was inverting the yield curve. Now, an inverted yield curve is nothing more fancy than when long-run interest rates are lower than short-run interest rates. It doesn't typically work that way. Why do we care? Well, it turns out that this is the only significant leading indicator of an oncoming recession that we actually have available to us. Now, it's a leading indicator, but causation and correlation are completely different things, and anybody in economics should appreciate that. I will tell you, we never bought into this. If you remember, my big conclusion last year was that the expansion was going to continue. Wealth and income will drive consumer spending. The economy will keep moving. And Beacon contributes to the Wall Street Journal forecast, and this is the recession probability index. You can see this on the right-hand side. And the average for the Wall Street Journal was 60% over the course of the last year, 60% chance of a recession within 12 months. We never got above 20%, and even that one, I swear to God, I screwed up on the Excel spreadsheet. I don't know what I hit it to. It went in anyway. I was really at 10% the entire time, and of course, we've been lowering that ever since then. And I'm pleased to tell you we were right. That's right. Here he is, Mr. Right. Now, by the way, let me take that on, just for just a second, because we all have to appreciate the reason I have to be Mr. Right when I'm here is because as soon as I walk in the front door of my house, I am Mr. Wrong about everything at all time with everybody else who lives in that house. So, work with me, okay? Let me have a little bit. But what's interesting about this? Take a look at the day. Not only has the economy not tipped into a recession, it's actually been accelerating. Did you see the GDP release last week? 5% growth. This year, we're running at 3% in terms of real growth rate. Yes, powered by consumers. Consumers have added 2/3 of that, but it wasn't even that. Here's one of the predictions I missed completely last year. I told you construction was going to go into a deep freeze. Actually, not at all. Construction has been picking up. It looks better today than it did a year ago. Now, of course, all of this is predicated on that strong consumer, and wow, consumers have just continued to increase their spending. Nice steady line. Despite the surge in inflation, the decline in disposable income, they just keep on spending. And it isn't just that they have overcome inflation, overcome high interest rates. Americans are having fun. Just look at the data. Restaurant spending right now is 38% higher than it was before the pandemic. 38% higher. You, of course, have Las Vegas. Las Vegas has never been busier. Nevada gaming revenues, all-time high level, without a full return to the convention business, without, of course, the Chinese whales rolling in to drop their $100,000 chips into machines I never get to see. Of course, foreign travel, Americans are traveling abroad like nobody's business. Now, mind you, the rest of the world hasn't returned to the United States quite as quickly, but man, we are going abroad. If you want to feel bad about your profits at your company, take a look at Live Nation's 10K. They can't make money any faster. Every single concert they put on sells out. Every single VIP package. You know, do I have an index of, shall we say, consumer exuberance? I do. It's the amount of time it takes to go from Coachella to LAX on Monday after the festival ends. This year it was 9 hours, people. 9 hours. That is what's going on out there. It isn't just a bounce back in services. What's interesting is how Americans started buying a lot of goods, and on the right-hand side in particular, recreational goods and vehicles, furnishing, clothing, motor vehicles. People are having the time of their life. Now, of course, with consumers moving forward, business investment remains nice and strong, particularly for stuff that's important for the California economy. Big increases in spending on software, research and development, information processing equipment, industrial production remains relatively high. The labor market, still incredibly tight. Unemployment rate in the United States continues to be below 4%. Job openings have cooled off a bit. They cooled from about 7.2% to about 5.8%. But to be clear, this is still higher than at any point since we started measuring this data 25 years ago. And after the brief surge of inflation has faded away, real wage growth is yet again back into strong, positive territory. In fact, the biggest issue out there in the United States remains the lack of people. And we've talked about this, right? The whole argument here all goes back to the baby boomer generation, a generation that, of course, all came out of families of 14 kids. Apparently, they were so traumatized by the experience of their parents regularly forgetting their name at the breakfast table that they all went out and had one kid, which they excessively parented, giving us 25 years of neurotic workers that we all have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, it's funny, too, because this is obvious. Demographers is telling this was going to happen for years. But people still think that there's this, you know, there's a whole slew of 27-year-olds sitting in mom's basement smoking weed and playing PlayStation. I swear to God there's not. If you look at participation rates for 25 to 54-year-olds, it is near a 30-year high. Again, we are extracting every bit of work out of this population, right? And not only has the economy accelerated, but so have the asset markets. Yet again, despite rising interest rates, we've seen a surprising surge in equity prices over the course of the last year. Debt markets remain remarkably clean. And yes, we heard already, Bitcoin has indeed come back. I'm with you. It is frustrating, right? Absolutely frustrating. We've talked about this. Is there a fundamental value to Bitcoin? Of course there is. It's zero. If you want to know why, read this particular book. It's very obvious, right? And by the way, speaking of this book, I actually just mailed a copy out of this particular book to this clown because he's going to have a lot of time to read over the next couple decades of his life. So, you know, maybe he'll learn something from this particular experience. Now, where does this bring me? Well, it brings me, of course, to a conversation about narratives. A year ago, again, it was the end of the world. Everything was collapsing around our ears. But that's not what happened. Now, as I've been saying for year after year, you have to beware the narrative. And this has been a bit an epiphany for me. I'm going to talk more about this in the second half. But it all boils down very simply to the idea that the things we talk about, the things we believe, the way we perceive the world is not necessarily completely aligned with economic reality as I see it in the data on a day-to-day basis. And it's not supposed to work this way. It's not. In the Chicago School of Thought, we are taught about the rational agent who internalizes information and makes the best decision accordingly. But when you actually look at the real world, it just doesn't work that way, right? And we see it all the time. Social narratives and economic realities from a Venn diagram perspective are not as overlapped as that basic assumption would have you believe. And Bitcoin is a classic example of this. Look, here's the simple logic. Yes, there's a limited number of Bitcoins. Here's the problem. There's an infinite number of cryptocurrencies. Ergo, by definition, because it's not a controllable supply, it cannot have real value, yet it does. Why? Narratives. A bunch of crypto bros tell each other stories in their various sorts of crypto bro parties, and they throw around these silly theories and highfalutin words, and somehow or other, in the midst of that utter pile, of bullshit, they manage to create value out of thin air, right? Thin air. That is the power of the narrative. And it isn't just crypto. The value of gold is wildly beyond its actual industrial applications. Why? Well, because, you know, the English used it as the basis of their currency in 1640. Who cares? But today, nevertheless, that history creates value where it shouldn't exist. Now, there's another side to this, the unsustainable federal deficit. We have a $1.7 trillion deficit. 1.7 trillion, people. And yet, at the same time, 120% debt to GDP. Enormous obligations for Medicare and Social Security, right? Coming down the path at us. And we need to spend more money on Ukraine and Israel. And you're like, wow, this is kind of a train wreck. But no one cares. Honestly, you go, well, no, I've seen that story in the paper. You have, but you don't care. How do I know? Because it's not part of any political campaign right now. It's just not. Oh, the Democrats and Republicans kind of generally wave their hand at it. But let's be honest. The Democrats think we need to raise taxes. But if you put them in power, they can't do it. They don't have the political wherewithal to actually make that happen. And the Republicans say, we're going to cut spending. The same thing, you put them in power, and they can't do it either. Neither party has any political ability to do something about it, and that's because we simply don't care. We say it, but it's not truly part of our narrative. And that is also scary. It's just as scary as Bitcoin having value. Now, mind you, there is stuff in the middle, right? For example, one thing we all know, Ticketmaster rips us off. They are a monopoly. Every time I turn around, the Justice Department is lobbying another antitrust lawsuit at some tech company, but never Ticketmaster. What is going on? This is social narrative. It's economic reality. There's a third problem. What do we do about it? So yet again, all sorts of ways that this thing is important. Now, when you start thinking about the world this way, it makes a hell of a lot more sense. For example, you see narratives skewing interpretations of economic news, narratives at the root of economic bubbles, narratives driving bad policy choices over and over again. This is why a couple of years ago, when Robert Shiller wrote the book Narrative Economics, he said, we need to incorporate the contagion of narratives into economic theory, otherwise we remain blind to a very real mechanism for economic change. I could not agree more. It's the only way of thinking about it. And to be clear, what it means is a forecaster has to do two things. We have to look at the narrative, we have to look at the data, and then, this is the hard part, figure out how they fit together. That is the tricky part of forecasting. But of course, what it means in the end, ultimately, is it goes right to the heart. It's all been said before, maybe in different ways, but as Mark Twain said it, it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble, it's what you know for sure that just ain't so. Over and over again. And of course, what's the narrative we continue to hear today? This is one of my favorite things. I found this meme on the internet the other day, and it's all over the place. I wouldn't typically just pick on somebody, but really, I mean, this is everywhere. Boomers can't conceptualize. This college student on TikTok says older generations don't know about inflation, never had to fight for jobs, and the comments are in full support. Really? Well, by the way, this does prove one thing. TikTok truly makes you stupid. But putting that to one side, I realize it's been a bad year and a half, but it hasn't that been bad. We had 1.5 years of inflation after 3.5 years of very low inflation, about 18% over the last 5 years. Go back to 1979, where after 5 years, it was 50%. I cannot believe we sit around talking about inflation as if it's, of course, the worst thing ever. And as for finding a job, you know, a year ago, there were 2 job openings for every single person looking for a job. It has now cooled off where there's only 1.6 job openings for every person looking for a job. My cat could get a job, for God's sake, right? And that, of course, is why real earnings are going up. And they're going up for everybody. Take a look at the left-hand side. This is real earnings by age, and you can see that everybody is doing better. No millennials are not falling behind. No millennials are not going to have a worse standard of living than their parents. Indeed, what's interesting about this, Gen Z, I should say. Gen Z compared to boomers, take a look on the top here, and it's a little hard, but let me explain. A 25 to 34-year-old last year made $46,000 in inflation-adjusted terms. If you go back to when boomers were in that same age group back in 1992, they were making $32,000 a year in real money. In fact, Gen Z is significantly better off from an income perspective than their parents were. And of course, it's not just the income. Life expectancy is up. Infant mortality is down. Crime rates are down. Percent of the population with a college degree is up, right? And what about all the other things? You remember I've talked about this to you before. Like, this is a standard cell phone. Everybody has one of these today. When I was a kid, this is what a cell phone looked like, okay? Right? A little different. This is a beautiful, wonderful car today. You charge it and it's wonderful. It drives itself. This was a car back when I was a kid. You remember? It would blow up if someone bumped into you. Yes, Gen Z, that was a thing. That was my generation. TV today, TV back then, a TV today with, of course, a gazillion things you can watch on demand. I've honestly stopped watching TV, not because I don't like it, but I honestly have no idea what to watch. It's just too confusing. I can't even turn it on. And, of course, back when I was a kid, you remember dieting? You remember how miserable it was? Well, now you just take a damn shot. Really? Just shut up, Gen Z. Your life is amazing. And, of course, our narrative about California, CEO magazine just came out with their 2023 rankings for business climate, and California was number 50. By the way, in 22, number 50. 21, 50. 20, 50. 19, 18, 7. Can anybody say GOAT? Woohoo! Let's hear it for California. But yet again, and of course, we do have these big budget deficits, which you have to worry about. That's a big problem in Sacramento right now. But take a step back. Actually, California had a little bit of a slow recovery, but we picked up the steam. We're now at about 3.8% job growth relative to where we were pre-pandemic, and that puts us in the top third of states. You're right, we're not growing as fast as Idaho, Utah, Nevada, or Florida, but we are growing faster than roughly 33 other states. Big problem in California is labor shortages like it is in the U.S. You can see our job openings rate is still high. The unemployment rate is very, very low. And this, of course, is nothing more than a labor force issue. This has been a singular issue I have talked about over and over and over again. Again, we're not as bad, right? Our labor force is not quite as bad as growth as bad as Vermont, Maine, or Wyoming. But I'd like to point out that while Vermont obviously has a reason for low labor force growth, not so much in California. And of course, when you compare us to Arizona or Utah, you can see how much more housing they're building. And, on that basis, on the right-hand side, all this conversation about Texas versus California, we hear it all the time. Why are they different? You have the two governors constantly talking about how, big their economy is, right? And again, there's one story between Texas and California. They building housing, we don't. That's why they get labor force growth and economic growth, and we don't. It is a simple situation. The big question is who's going to learn from who, and what's interesting, of course, is actually it looks like Texas is learning more from California than the other way around. Because suddenly housing supply is drying up there. Prices in Texas, home prices are growing faster than they are in California right now. Let that rattle around in your head. Now, it isn't all bad news, of course. Because we won't build enough housing, what you end up with is a swirl. High-income people still want to come to the state for its thriving tech sector. They move in, and when they move in, of course, they drive prices up, which drive lower-income folks out. It is a big swirl. Now, this is good for the state because it means our economy can keep growing faster than the U.S. overall. But, of course, if you're a worker in one of these more, shall we say, not so technological, not so high-income sectors, well, you suddenly have less and less ability to maintain a quality life here, and as a result of that, many of these folks leave. They either are leaving, going to the central part of the state where things are cheaper, or equivalently out of the state to places like Arizona or Nevada and places like that. Within California, the story is exactly the same thing. The places that are growing are the places that have labor force. Top of the list, yet again, the center parts of the state. Stockton is 10% above where it was from a jobs perspective. Sacramento up 6%. Inland Empire 5.5%. Fresno 5%. Now, of course, locally here, well, it's funny. Here's one of my first quotes. This, of course, comes from Brent. And Brent said, last spring I anticipated that we were heading for a recession, but today I don't hear that very much. Apparently, people heard me last year, and yet again, you take a look at the data. Things are pretty good. Over the course of the last year, things have accelerated in the Central Coast just a bit, not too great, but still just a bit. Overall one-year job growth in San Luis Obispo about 3.1%, Santa Barbara about 2.9%. These are higher numbers than for the state overall, which ran about 1.7%. Get a little deeper into it, say what's going on. Well, as of the most recent number, about 128,000 jobs over the last 4 years, what I'm doing here is a 4-year comparison to give you a little sense of what has happened since pre-pandemic. About 4,500 more jobs from where they were 4 years ago. About a quarter of those are actually in your farm sector. The farm sector has been doing pretty well, particularly over the last year, and that, of course, is driving things up. Health services is next. Non-durable goods is up about 800. Then you have construction, food services. Now, mind you, yet again, an issue of labor constraints. Unfortunately, as some sectors expand, other sectors are necessarily forced to shrink. And business services, of course, other services are down a few jobs. Wholesale trade is down. Durable goods manufacturing is relatively flat. So you can see the kind of ebb and flow for which part of the economy is moving forward and which aren't. Now, with good, steady numbers, the other thing that's happening is good income growth. Take a look on the left-hand side. This is average weekly earnings. And if you go back just a couple of years, it's amazing how far below Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo County was. Average weekly earnings here back in 2016 were earning about $800 compared to $950. But look at the big catch-up effect over the course since the pandemic came to an end. Average weekly earnings are now about $1,000 a week here in San Luis Obispo. That's a third higher than it was before the pandemic. On the right-hand side, median household incomes also growing very steadily. It is interesting. You go back to 1997, and San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara had about the same median household income as the nation overall. Significant increases. Right now, the median household income in 2022, Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo, $90,000, significantly higher than the national median household income. Good, steady numbers. Again, you could see the spending growth, the income growth, the prosperity of the local population here. Taxable sales are cooling off just a little bit in 2023 relative to 2022. But then again, remember, 2022 was almost 35% higher than it was pre-pandemic. Numbers are still up pretty strongly. Big growth over the last year. County and state pool, that of course has to do with the distribution of money that comes through, usually from these state pools that have to do with internet transactions and whatnot. Business and industry is up. Food and drugs is up. Good numbers there. Airport. The airport's gotten some new planes. Airport traffic is picking up. It's about 10-15% higher than it was last year at this point in time. Very solid numbers. One of the things I've said to this community over the last bunch of years is you need a better airport. You need more traffic. And that node is incredibly important for economic growth. This is really solid trends. If you want to get a little bit into a deep dive on the jobs, this is an idea. These are location quotients. I'm not sure I've done this for you before. But it's really just considering the share of local jobs compared to, well, in this case, I do it the state overall, and not as opposed to the nation. Now, not too surprisingly, by far and away, leisure and hospitality is the biggest cluster here. It's got 1.5. That means the share of jobs in the local community devoted to leisure and hospitality is half again as high as the rest of the state overall. You can see just how strong that number is. Government's number 2, by the way, that's Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. That's it in a nutshell. That's what you're seeing there. Construction, of course, also pretty high. Retail trade up there as well. Now, you get down to the other side of it, you can see information, business services, wholesale trade. These are very low parts of it. Not surprised, there's not a lot of wholesale trade. Business services actually has been a decent part of growth, but not over the course of the last couple of years. And in terms of manufacturing, that's about even. But again, we got to be really clear. There's lots of different kinds of manufacturing. On the right-hand side, of course, by far and away, the biggest source of manufacturing is beverages, otherwise known as wine. Yay, exactly. And you can see how much that's gone up. In 2012, there were 1,500 people employed in wine manufacturing. It has doubled in the last decade. It is over 3,000. Hotels, of course. Again, what could you say about hotels is they've been steady. Yes, they have not heated up the way they did a couple of years ago, but the numbers are still very good. This is some room demand right here locally. This is daily demands rates. And you can see yet again how the numbers are consistent. They haven't been growing, but they are nice and consistent. Another great quote, of course, from Chuck. We have almost 1,000 more rooms in supply chain than 2019. Hotel revenues are up 25%. So while things are flat year over year, again, don't let that year-over-year comparison get in your head. Ultimately, relative to pre-pandemic, this industry is charging more, making more money, and of course, putting more money back into the local economy. Other parts of things going on right now, wine exports, we're actually down this particular year, not doing pretty good. Some of that certainly had to do with the rough wine harvest we saw a couple years ago, given all the issues they had with rain. But nevertheless, the things do seem to be turning around. You can see the SLO wineries on the right-hand side. You can see the overall increase. It's interesting. I started talking back before 2012. There were 100 wineries back then. Today, it's approaching 180. Think of that. All the new folks out there expanding on this. And, of course, they had an amazing year overall for ag. We just got the 22 crop report. The two biggest things, strawberries and wine grapes. Look at that number for wine grapes, up it's about 24% of the overall crop. Strawberries, about 25%. Venture capital. Venture capital, not a huge venture capital base here in the region, but it has come in. 2023 numbers, not good. I'm just going to be blunt. Not good. Very, very low at particular point in time. Now, this is not a local situation. It has to do with a national one, which we'll get into when we get to the other side of stuff. But, you know, one of the things I also want to point out, and this is where we're going to start getting into thinking about what we need to talk about in terms of the future. One of the big issues when venture capital comes in, particularly in some of these nascent technologies you have here, very often there is some bright folks coming out of San Luis Obispo, and they come up with some great ideas, or maybe there's an entrepreneur here who's coming up with a good idea. But what ends up happening is as soon as they do get some money and they get going, suddenly they start opening up operations elsewhere. And you see, whether it's HAPX or King Energy or RX Redefined, all folks that kind of started here but are expanding in other parts of the nation, even in other parts of the world. And of course, the reason for that is the one bit of really bad news I have for you, although it sounds like good news, and that is the fact that the unemployment rate in San Luis Obispo County right now is about 3%. 3%. Incredibly, incredibly tight labor market. And the reason it's a tight labor market is, of course, there has been no labor force growth in a decade. There has been no labor force growth in San Luis Obispo County for 10 years. Well, you can't expand an economy when your labor force growth does not grow. That is a fundamental issue. And when you think about it, I realize that this is a community that wants to expand your economy. You want to diversify your economy. The problem is, if you don't grow your labor force and wine and tourism are doing great, by definition, it starts pushing out other parts of the economy. So labor force growth is a big issue, and that's what we're going to focus on when we start talking about what's going to happen next. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our host. Thank you very much. I'll see you in an hour.
Good job. I'm good. It's all you.
You put it on.
Wow. Thank you so much, Chris. That was fantastic. Although I'm a little, it's hard to be left with that labor force growth number. I had no idea. I didn't see that coming. That's very grim news. Perhaps our next speaker can shed a little light on it. I'm so excited to introduce Melissa James. She is new to the forecast, but probably not a stranger to many of you. She's been the president and CEO of REACH since it was formed as the Hourglass Project in 2019. Under her leadership, the organization's grown to a staff of 13, leading high-impact initiatives across SLO and Santa Barbara counties. She's a Cal Poly grad, former Capitol Director in the state legislature. She's received all sorts of accolades, including Tribune's Top 20 Under 40, Pacific Coast Business Times loves her, top woman in business, most influential people. She's driven by a passion to ensure a good future on the Central Coast for her daughters, Lucy and Maggie, which inspires me personally. She also serves on the board of the San Luis Coastal Education Foundation, the SLO County Workforce Development Board. She's a personal friend of mine, and I happen to have video of her doing the limbo on roller skates. So if that's of interest, I don't charge very much. Find me in the back after the show. Let's welcome Melissa James.
Well, good morning. That limbo on roller skates actually ended up with a broken elbow, so I won't be as expressive with this hand as I usually am. But it's great to join you here this morning. I've been coming to the Economic Forecast for years and years and years listening to Chris Thornberg, and I can tell you that it is a privilege to join the stage, get the opportunity to share with you a little bit about what's happening in some of our key industry sectors and some of the economic development initiatives that are going on in San Luis Obispo County. So the Central Coast is in some exciting times. There's a lot of eyes on our region right now, thanks to the nexus of opportunities in energy and space and innovation that are drawing global attention, frequent headlines in local, state, and national publications. And it's been really exciting to see over these last several years that our region is really stepping out of the shadow of the larger metro areas to show what coordinated, focused action for our region can accomplish. And just by way of background, for those of you who don't know who REACH is, we are an economic action coalition serving SLO and Santa Barbara counties. We work across political aisles, jurisdictional boundaries, sectors of the community to increase economic prosperity for our region and for our residents, really with the vision that your friends, neighbors, employees, children have the opportunity to grow a life, a career, build a family here on the Central Coast. And we do that through a variety of different projects, initiatives, economic development programs, as well as policy, data, and research. So today, I'll just share with you at a high level what I plan to cover. I want to give you a sense of where we are now, kind of the state of play, what's happening, some key data in some of our industries in the region. And then I want to talk a little bit about what's on the horizon and some of the outsized opportunities that we have to compete on a more global scale. And then we'll talk a little bit from all of that about what we need to do and how some of this information can and should drive action here on the Central Coast. So jumping in a little bit about where we are now. So we've done a lot of work over the last several years to surface some of the economic and job growth opportunities in our region. We've dug into economic data on many fronts. All of this is available on our website. We'll be sending some information out to you as well after the conference this morning. But I wanted to share really quickly because we are wrapping up an economic impact analysis that is going to be published next week, and we're going to give you a sneak peek of that now. And it is an economic impact analysis of the contribution of Cal Poly, which we all know is a major economic engine for our region. Sneak peek tells us that the economic impact is about $2.6 billion, which is up 85% from the $1.4 billion in 2014, the last time this study was done. It represents about 12%, Cal Poly does, of the SLO County GDP, which is slightly higher than tourism at 10%. And more than half, about $1.4 billion, comes from the development of an educated regional workforce, which enhances the overall economic productivity of our region. And in the next 10 years, it's estimated that the university will be investing about $2.5 billion in capital expenditures. So let's talk a little bit about some of our key industry sectors. The context here is that we know that our region has lagged the state and nation in a lot of measures, including job growth, wages, and prosperity. But our region is more diversified than many people think. We have a lot of innovation industries with the potential to create good-paying jobs, more economic diversification, resilience, and opportunity. Those industries are clean tech, aerospace, tech, and ag tech, which you can see are multi-billion-dollar enterprises on the Central Coast, each employing thousands of educated, skilled workers and many looking to add a lot more. So what's on the horizon? Let's dig into some of those opportunities and some of the potential that we have that we can tap into. We'll start with the more visible, thanks to our energy-producing legacy, our pioneering utility-scale solar, and our regional sustainability mindset. We are here in SLO County and more broadly on the Central Coast at the epicenter of what is known as the clean energy transition, and there are a lot of eyes on our region. We know that this sector is strong and evolving. Just for comparison, the county of SLO has added 3 times the number of jobs in this sector to the neighboring county of Santa Barbara. But the story here is really about the high-profile opportunities thanks to the assets, expertise, and some of the unprecedented investments that are going into this big energy transition. Of course, we cannot talk about energy on the Central Coast without talking about Diablo, the state's last nuclear power plant, our largest private sector employer, and a major economic driver in our region. And thanks to legislation of SB 846, the power plant is likely to stay open for 5 or more years, continuing the big economic benefit and jobs in our region. We're also in our community kind of on a parallel track building that next chapter, looking at opportunities related to co-use and reuse of the industrial site, looking at a clean tech innovation park and activities on and around, led by Cal Poly, and looking at opportunities related to land conservation, public access, tribal celebration of the surrounding Diablo Canyon lands. And a lot of this community work envisioning has resulted in $160 million coming from the state to advance clean energy economic opportunities alongside land conservation, which is really a great story about how the Central Coast has a balanced vision of environmental stewardship and economic opportunity, which is very important as we think about the emerging industry of offshore wind. This is a big conversation at the global scale and most certainly here locally as well, because we have the largest designated area for floating offshore wind right off our coast. In fact, just this week, I think there were more than 700 people that participated in a big community dialogue that was catalyzed by our state and our federal legislators. It was held at the County Government Center, and it had some heavy-hitting agency and global industry leaders. What we know is that just a year ago, 3 companies invested $425 million to lease 3 unique projects, more than 20 miles off our coast, which just for context is about a 4-hour boat ride one way. This investment also put $27 million in community benefit and $66 million in workforce training on the table, with major multi-million-dollar investments that will be coming into infrastructure kind of on and around the West Coast. These decisions are happening right now, and we on the Central Coast have the opportunity to carve out what this industry is going to look like in our community, and infrastructure is a really important part of that conversation. And so based on a lot of the research and analysis, some of the key conversations with state, federal, agency leaders, industry leaders, what I really believe is that the critical opportunity for the Central Coast region is to become an operations and maintenance hub for this new industry. And what is an operations and maintenance hub, or known as an O&M hub? What that looks like is small-scale, upgraded infrastructure to support crew and equipment transfers, meaning people who would transport out by boat to the installed wind farms to maintain them. It could be anywhere from 1 to 3 locations on the Central Coast, compatible with existing uses, with investments ranging from $10 million to $100 million per O&M site. This would represent the potential for hundreds of highly skilled, good-paying, long-term jobs with the ability to expand manufacturing and supply chain opportunities throughout the Central Coast. And all of this is kind of part of a larger initiative to support working waterfronts and the wider blue-green economy. Of course, there's a lot more dialogue that will be needed in our community, but there is a real opportunity to advance this new energy sector in a way that honors our environmental stewardship and is right-sized for our community. Some other elements in the clean energy sector include what we all know, that we are known for the world's earliest and largest utility-scale solar farms. We have some enviable high-voltage transmission infrastructure that makes our region very attractive to investment and innovation. We have a Cal Poly Pier that's in the process currently of being certified as a renewable energy test facility, and several out-of-state companies that are looking to invest in the Central Coast related to energy storage. So the bottom line here is that there are a lot of pieces on the board in a changing energy landscape. There's a lot of collaboration that's needed to define and put them into position for success. So let's talk a little bit about space and aerospace. And this is another global industry that's really primed to take off here on the Central Coast. And a lot of conversation that we have out in the community, people kind of associate space with Vandenberg, but the reality is that the aerospace sector in SLO County has actually outpaced Santa Barbara County, the state, and the nation in recent years. And there's really cool things happening in the aerospace industry here, such as electric air mobility, next-gen drones, the manufacturing of lightweight aerospace components, the development of propulsion and fueling systems for space launch, and a new pipeline of aviation technicians through a very cool partnership between ACI Jet and Cuesta College. Again, the bigger story here is not what's happening today, but it's the trajectory of the industry. So we did an economic impact study in 2021 of kind of Vandenberg and the potential of the space industry, and it noted the potential for about 2,000 additional jobs by 2030. And what we know now is that the Space Force is adding at least 500 jobs. SpaceX is looking to add between 500 and 800 jobs in the near term. They've expanded out to another launch pad on base, and it's only 2023. In that pipeline, we're already almost halfway to the 2,000 mark, and we're not even including the hundreds that are likely with companies like Firefly, Relativity, and Blue Origin that are gearing up on base, and they are investing hundreds of millions of dollars in the new space race. So to put this all into perspective, the launches at Vandenberg have doubled in the last year, and they're on track to double again. So about a year ago, the launches were about one a month. And next year, we expect them to increase so much that it'll be more than one a week. And we're seeing that the federal government is making some big bets. They have $600 million earmarked to invest into Vandenberg and what they're calling their spaceport and Range of the Future initiative. And this is all complemented by some big state action as well, by executive order to prioritize space and Vandenberg's role in California. Because we're talking about space, I also want to take a moment to talk about the Paso Robles Space Innovation and Technology Park in and around the airport. This is a really exciting opportunity that's taking shape, partnering with the city of Paso is partnering with Cal Poly on their federal application to be designated as a horizontal launch spaceport, taking payload into low Earth orbit. And this is exciting. They're already drawing interest from companies such as Stellar Exploration, that's using the test site for micropropulsion systems as a part of a NASA project. And there are many other national and international companies eager to root down and utilize this new spaceport. And the city is thinking about it from a big picture view, really investing into workforce development partnerships and strategies to support this exciting new visionary endeavor. So while space and clean tech get a lot of attention because they're in the headlines quite often, we also know that technology and ag tech are major drivers in our region as well. In tech, this particular sector is among the highest wages on the Central Coast. It's everything from IT to AI to software. The industry itself grew on the Central Coast by double digits across most measures since 2012, including boosting jobs by 24%, earnings by nearly 52%, and kind of value add by almost 36%. And in the ag and ag tech sector, there's an upward trend in this industry as well over the last 20 years on the Central Coast, outpacing the state and the nation, and expected to grow by another 10% by 2027. And there's a lot of promise that we're seeing in the ag tech sector, in particular kind of in the startup and incubation of new technologies. So thinking about our key growth sectors, I want to kind of pull out and highlight another important industry that's starting to crystallize as a strong suit for our region with a lot of opportunity to grow, and that is precision manufacturing, and more specifically, autonomous systems. It's really at the nexus of technology and precision manufacturing. It is the making of highly precise and advanced technical products, as well as the sophisticated software to make them work. And it really cuts across multiple industries in our region. A recent analysis that we did of the research and technology coming out of the Central Coast shows that we are punching far above our weight class compared to our global peers in electronics, optics, quantum technologies, and materials. So precision manufacturing generates a lot of high-quality jobs at different skill levels. It's an industry currently with 10,000 jobs and a $2.5 billion impact, and it's represented about 15% of the job growth in SLO County. And we know from working with local companies here in and around the region that they're preparing to expand on the Central Coast, upwards of 1,000 new jobs, and we're working currently with a handful of different domestic and international companies that are looking to relocate in fields like air mobility and automated machinery. So, wrapping up a little bit here, what do we need to do? So data is great, and data-informed decision making is even greater, but when it drives us into action, that is really the place that we want to be. So what do we need to succeed? I'm going to share 3 things. One is that strong talent pipeline. It's really our people and the talent and innovation that we have that tethers companies here. It's certainly an area we're hearing from Chris where we need more labor participation. Our small size as a region, our fragmented geography, our diverse industry can present challenges compared to other regions, though we're finding some common job functions that cut across industries with overlapping abilities and skills that we can tap into to help kind of create scale. The good news is that we have some world-class companies, but also we have some world-class education and training providers with our colleges and universities here in our region. And we just need to get really focused on a couple of different priorities in tandem. One, of course, is increasing our economic vitality in our region, but doing it in such a way that also creates economic opportunity by reducing some of the social and economic disparities that we have in our region as well. So as an example, we have about 35,000 students in our local public K-12 school system in SLO County, and roughly 50% of them, so 1 in every 2, are socioeconomically disadvantaged. So as we think about this, what we really need to be focused on is building a durable, diverse, and inclusive homegrown talent pipeline by really aligning our educational and training opportunities across our K-12 system up through our higher education system to make sure we have an economically mobile next generation talent pipeline that can also fuel those jobs of the future. Second, it wouldn't be a REACH conversation if we weren't talking about regional collaboration. This is really overarches a lot of this type of work, and we've seen regional collaboration really start to crack open some new opportunities in the last several years, but there's much more work we need to do. The reality is the opportunities before us, all the low-hanging fruit has already been picked. And we can have a pull toward that old scarcity mindset and that internal competition. And I think the charge here is really we as community and business leaders resisting that urge to go at it alone, put in the work, recommit ourselves to that we before me spirit of cooperation so that we can have sustained collective regional success. And the last one that I want to highlight, this is what is talked about at every forecast that I've been to. It's also talked about at every community meeting and probably many of our dinner conversations is housing. Jocelyn's going to dig into this in a little bit more detail, but important things really bear repeating. And for us, the cost and availability of housing is the #1 impediment to hiring and business growth. We see it often that companies and jobs are simply growing elsewhere because of the lack of housing. So we must work urgently as a community at every stage to build the homes, the neighborhoods that our workforce needs, moving projects through the planning pipeline more quickly and approving them without delay. There's been a lot of great progress that I want to note with some regional plans put in place, some innovative housing projects proposed, many that have been approved and many that are under construction, and we're so grateful for that work, but there's much more work that we need to do along those lines. So I think with that, I will close out and say thank you so much for having me. I think we have the opportunity to really double down looking at the potential for our region to make sure that we are creating those bright futures for our communities, businesses, friends, neighbors, and our children. Thank you.
You had me at quantum, Melissa. That was fantastic. Thank you. All right, well, I am excited to introduce to you another local business leader in Jocelyn Brennan. Jocelyn is the president and CEO of HRM Corp. She specializes in entitlement consulting, stakeholder engagement, and government relations. She's worked in the community on policy, development, strategic initiatives at the state and county and city levels. Prior to the HRM Corp, Jocelyn was the district director for the 35th Assembly District, serving over 500,000 constituents, many of you all in the room. She worked at the SLO County Board of Supervisors. She served as president and CEO of the South County Chambers of Commerce, representing more than 800 businesses. She's a valued member of the CCEF board, She's also oversees government affairs for the SLO County Realtors Association, so she's particularly equipped for this conversation. Please welcome Jocelyn Brennan.
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you, Melissa. Well, Melissa nicely segued in what I'm going to talk about. Clearly, we have a lot of exciting opportunities before us as a region, but I am here to sort of drill down into a snapshot of the Central Coast housing and where we're at right now in our local data. So we're going to drill down into that a little bit. So this is a housing affordability index, and you can see on the left this gray line is the U.S. affordability compared to the 58 counties in California. And then on the right you can see a blue line that is California's overall affordability compared to the 58 counties. So where is San Luis Obispo County in this index? Right there. So we are the third least affordable county in the state of California. If you're wondering what's behind us, it's just Santa Barbara and Mono County. So how does this affect our first-time home buyers? This is especially challenging for them. For our first-time home buyers, let's be optimistic and say that we had a 6.5 interest rate and they had a special program for first-time home buyers. They would still need $143,700 to qualify to buy the median home price here in San Luis Obispo County. So what is the per capita income? It's $41,407. So let's say they were going to buy a home with, someone else. They were going to go in together to buy a home. They still would not meet that $143,000 to qualify to buy a home here. So how does that affect the non-first-time home buyers? This is a traditional housing affordability index for a non-first-time home buyer to buy a medium-priced home in our county. Again, let's say a lower interest rate like 6.5% with a 20% down payment. They would need an income of $220,400. So what is our median income? Our household income is $82,514. This is a little bit lower than what Chris said, so let's say it's 82 to 90. This still would not qualify that household to buy a median-priced home in our county. So, who is affected by this? Again, remember the minimum needed is $214,000. These are the annual mean wages for SLO County, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So on the left, we have our retail sales worker at about $34,000. We have our firefighter at $66,000, chefs and head cooks at $55,000, elementary school teachers at $77,000, computer programmers at $98,000, police and sheriff at $102,000, and registered nurses at $122,000. But as you can see, that still doesn't get them to the income that they need to qualify to buy a median home price. These are our essential workers that deserve to be able to live where they work. Okay, so how does housing supply affect these numbers? So if we go left to right, you'll see the two bar graphs. In 1986, our population in California has gone from 27 million to 39 million people. That's an increase as indicated by the blue graph on the left. Since 1986 to 2022, home sales have gone from almost about 400,000 selling a year to 342,000. So our population has increased by 12 million, but our home sales have gone down by about 52,000. In 1988, there were 255 housing permits pulled, and in 2022, there was 130,000. So clearly, our inventory is not keeping up with the growth of our state. So what will happen as mortgage rates increase? At 7.5% interest rate, which today we're at 8%, the monthly payment on a 30-year loan is $5,680, and that's with 20% down. So as rates increase, that monthly payment obviously will continue to grow. There's that one. So as mortgage rates increase, the percentage of families that can afford a home goes down. So right now in our county, San Luis Obispo, less than 10% of our families can afford to buy the median home price here. So a comparison of average monthly rents. This gets a little bit better when we look at rent, and Chris talked about that a little bit. So if we're talking multifamily, the numbers look a little bit better. In SLO County, according to the census, the average rent for a one bedroom is about $1,800. If you include the very conservative numbers for transportation, utilities, your renter's looking at about $2,500 a month. If they're bringing in $3,400 a month and you add in inflation and other living expenses, they're living paycheck to paycheck and can't climb that housing ladder. So we live in a beautiful place, and a lot of people want to live here. The realtors are seeing a lot of out-of-area buyers, particularly from the Bay Area, working remotely, and that does drive our housing prices up. So what is our solution? Guess what I'm going to say? Build more homes. According to the state in the SLO County Regional Needs Allocation, or otherwise known as RENA, we need to facilitate the construction of 10,810 homes by 2028. You can see these broken down here by city and by the unincorporated area of the county. This chart shows SLO County permits that have been pulled from 2009 on the left to 2022 on the right. So the darker color is for single-family homes, and that lighter color is for multifamily. In 2022, our county pulled about 1,082 permits for building homes. So we're on the right track. You can see we're on the right track. I'm hoping that at the economic forecast this time next year, that bar graph on the right is much higher, much taller. We have some housing developments in the pipeline. We have about 4 in North County. We have 4 in the SLO area, and we have 2 in South San Luis Obispo County, so that's promising. The other good news is that we're starting to see the perception of housing change. For many of us, this is what a single-family home, this is the type of single-family home we dreamed of, and this is the image that we have in our mind, and many of us still do picture a single-family home that way. But the next generation of leaders and business owners and employers picture it a little bit differently. They might picture it like this. Or this. I'm putting this here to get these ideas in your mind about housing. We have to include more density. Maybe it looks like this. This. Wait for it. Even this. So we know what to do. We've heard Chris tell us this year after year. We know we need to build more affordable housing units. We need to provide rental assistance for low-income residents and for our service workers. We need to increase density and allowances for more housing. We need to streamline permitting and approval processes. We need to offer incentives for developers to include affordable units. We need to encourage smaller units like ADUs and tiny homes. And we need to make being pro-housing politically correct. It's easy to talk about this problem as if it's happening to someone else, but in a room of this size, I know that there's probably folks in here who want to put down roots and buy a home and maybe start a business or continue with your current employment. Or maybe you're a business owner and you're considering leaving the area because you can't afford to pay your employees enough to match the cost of living here. Ask your colleagues and ask your employees about their housing situation. You might be surprised by some of the answers. Let's reward those decision makers who are pro-housing. Let's harness our collective creativity and problem-solving skills. There's a lot of smart people in this room right now. Let's work together to find innovative solutions to housing. And let's continue this conversation. And with that, we are going to watch another video from one of our sponsors that has a great solution. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nick Tompkins, the managing partner of the Dana Reserve in Nipomo. As a fifth-generation local deeply connected to this community, I believe in honoring Nipomo's history. The Dana Reserve project is driven by the Homes for All ethos. We aim to provide diverse housing options, including low, moderate, workforce, missing middle, and age-restricted housing in numbers and percentages unlike anything seen before in San Luis Obispo County. We're also investing in essential infrastructure for the Dana Reserve and the Nipomo community. In today's world, healthcare, education, and housing costs are critical. We're addressing these challenges by collaborating with Dignity Health for medical facilities, establishing a Cuesta College satellite campus, partnering with People's Self-Help Housing, and creating early child care and education facilities while offering down payment assistance for first-time homebuyers. California faces a housing shortage and affordability crisis. Let's come together to change this for our children, grandchildren, and businesses. We have a collective responsibility to build a brighter, more equitable, and inclusive future.
Chair for Dana Reserve. Thank you, Nick. And thank you, Jocelyn. You know, I heard one of the audience members say cute at the image of the tiny home. I'm pretty sure they were talking about the model, and I was curious if that was an upgrade option or... Okay, we'll get more information on that. Well, thank you so much. I do want to just take a moment. I'm sure the wheels are turning this morning. You've got a lot of questions. Now's a wonderful opportunity to pull out your cell phone and email your questions to ccefquestions@gmail.com. ccefquestions@gmail.com. Well, I am excited. This is the audience participation part of the program. We are about to hear from 3 local entrepreneurs working at the Cal Poly Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. That's right, folks. It's time for 3 minutes to win it. And for those of you new to this segment, think Shark Tank Light. They're going to come up here, they're going to pitch for 3 minutes, and then you are going to get an opportunity to vote for your favorite, and the winner will take home a $5,000 cash prize today. So let's get excited. Now, before I invite them to pitch, I want to introduce to you Judy Mahan. She is the, she's the Economic Development Director for the CIE. She's also a CCEF board member, and she is going to make her way to the stage, and we're going to hear another sponsor video appropriately from Cal Poly. So let's give a look.
Hello, I'm Jeff Armstrong, President of Cal Poly. The Central Coast Economic Forecast is an important event each fall for our community. It's a chance to look up from our individual occupations and think about how the regional economy as a whole fits together. It's also an opportunity to ask ourselves how we can make our regional economy even better. For the first time in nearly a decade and only the second time in Cal Poly's history, we've contracted with REACH to conduct an economic impact analysis. The analysis, performed by Deloitte, identified that Cal Poly's presence in the region generates $2.6 billion of economic activity each year. If we were to look at it per student impact in the region, that's $41,000 per student a year. We're so proud of what we're able to accomplish because of our important and extensive partnerships, including so many of you in the room today. Thank you for partnering with us and the Central Coast Economic Forecast to provide the information and insight to keep the regional economy getting better and better.
Good morning. So my name is Judy Mahan. I am the Economic Development Director for the Cal Poly Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, also known as CIE. The CIE is well known on campus for supporting Cal Poly students who want to explore the entrepreneurship path and take their first steps towards actually launching a startup here on the Central Coast. We are very active campus-wide, engaging with students and faculty to facilitate those efforts. The CIE, though, and this is a part I try to sort of clarify, we're extremely engaged with the regional business community. We operate the Hot House downtown. We're on Higuera Street. It's a 15,000 square foot space where we run 3 important programs. We have a 2-year incubator program for startups. We're open to all startups from the entire region, not just startups coming out of Cal Poly, and you'll see a nice mix of that here this morning. We also run our Small Business Development Center called also known as the SBDC, and I'll say a few more words about that in a minute. And we offer co-working space. So we've heard some mentions about remote workers. We have 50 to 60 remote workers or freelancers or solo entrepreneurs who come to our space just to use that as their office space on a daily basis. And they're here month over month. So it's a nice hub downtown. Let me share a little bit more about the SBDC, and then I'll really highlight the incubator program. The SBDC provides no-cost, one-on-one business consulting to entrepreneurs and business owners throughout SLO County. We have about 38 consultants on board that meet with these businesses daily to provide that support. Experts in business strategy, digital marketing, mechanical engineering, supply chain management, you name it, we have an expert on board that can meet with the business owner and provide some assistance and guidance. We receive grant funding from federal and state agencies, as well as from SLO County and the city of SLO. We use that funding to pay our consultants to do the consulting work. Since January, so just in the last 10 months, the SBDC has worked with 510 local businesses, providing just over 2,800 hours of consulting, supporting 2,700 local jobs, and we've helped our clients obtain $14.5 million in capital funding this year. So to Chris's point, it has slowed down slightly this year. We were just over close to 20 million last year, so there's definitely been a slowdown, but it's still happening. It's still fairly strong. We have 2 months to go. And so now let's focus on the incubator program that is also taking place out of the hothouse. We have 21 startups that are actively participating in our program right now. You'll be seeing 3 of them shortly. And our incubator startups, they're all SBDC clients. This allows them to obtain as much support as they need from our big consultant pool. Our incubator startups meet weekly with their assigned lead mentors. They participate in monthly deep dive coaching sessions specifically designed for them. We focus intensively on helping our startups prepare to pitch to investors, and not in terms of just the pitch itself, but also in terms of their business model, their revenue model, the IP protection, traction, all these other important facets in their business development. So what's next for CIE? Thanks to our County Board of Supervisors, who provided us last year with significant ARPA funding, we have launched initiatives to grow incubator programming in 4 specific industries: ag tech, aerospace, clean tech, and med tech. So definitely we are completely aligned with all the collaboration and research that's taken place through REACH and our other local stakeholders. All this collaboration and research has shown that we definitely have the right resources and assets to support startups in those industries. We are ramping up our focus on truly diversifying this local economic portfolio from the startup perspective. The vision is that all these startups will go through our 2-year incubator program and then stay and continue to grow here in SLO County. Our county definitely has the resources and capacity to do this. It's a very, very exciting time for all of us. So I want to thank again the Board of Supervisors and the City of SLO for their support. It's such a key component for creating these future, head of household jobs focused in tech for our region. Last but not least, I was reminding this morning our startups to make sure that they take advantage of this phenomenal audience to make an ask. You're always making an ask, right? Especially if you're a startup. But I realized that, I haven't asked too this morning. We run an annual program called AngelCon every year. Some of you may have heard of it. I know many of you have attended the event, another Shark Tank style event. At this event, the startups who pitch, we usually have 6 startups that'll come up and pitch. It takes place in May. And they actually win an investment of $100,000 or more. So my ask today is if there are any of you who are interested in learning to become an angel investor and participating in this process, we're selling units in a fund, $6,000 a unit. Please feel free to contact me to get more information. It's an incredibly wonderful group of people that we have on board this year as new investors. They're learning the process. They're going to be selecting their top 6 startups, doing due diligence on them, and we support them through the whole process to eventually make that 100K plus investment in May. So if you want to learn more, please come talk to me. And now, I want you to, we're going to show a short video introducing our 3 pitching startups, and then our startups will pitch back to back. And then please have your phones ready. In the program, there is a phone number, a cell phone number that you can dial to make your choice for the winning startup for this morning's event. Thank you very much. Roll the video.
Today, it's a battle of big ideas as 4 local startups compete for $5,000. Welcome to 3 Minutes to Win It, showcasing 4 of the Central Coast's best and brightest. See their passion, hear their business plans, and choose your favorite. Let's meet our contenders. Ryan Clough co-founded Abstract Security, a stealth cybersecurity startup developing advanced solutions to protect businesses and organizations from cyber threats, leveraging AI and threat research to assist security analysts. Zoetic Motion founder Zishan Khan and his team launched a platform to provide personalized support, real-time coaching, and continuous motivation for physical therapy patients beyond the clinic walls, empowering them to heal at home. Penny Lane Case and her team at Nexstera Tech are mitigating dangerous and costly battery-induced fires in the waste stream through their revolutionary use of radar technology for precise material differentiation. And finally, Quantum Energy co-founder Andrew DeMille and his team are revolutionizing clean energy decision-making to maximize economic development, while also optimizing for the health of people and planet for the first time. Get ready. The competition starts now.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Clough. I'm a co-founder and chief product officer of Abstract Security. We are an early stage cybersecurity company located here in the Central Coast region. So cybersecurity is a growing problem for companies of all sizes today. In fact, if you're paying attention to the headlines, you may have seen the recent MGM high-profile attack where they had customers not able to check in and casino operations shut down. What you may not have seen, though, actually, is the financial loss that resulted from that attack. They lost immediate revenues of over $100 million and over $3 billion off the valuation of the company on the public markets. So you might be thinking to yourself, how do I make sure this type of attack never happens to me or my company? Let's understand that by taking a look at the kind of legacy approach to securing the enterprise, right? So many of you have heard of data centers, right? This used to be how all kind of applications and data were stored within companies. You'd put them inside of a data center, and you had a security team that was responsible for building this kind of virtual perimeter around this data center to make sure that only authorized applications, authorized users were allowed in. Right? And this model worked really well for many years until more recently we have the very broad adoption we've all heard about cloud and SaaS technologies. So now the infrastructure at a company looks something more like this. It's a very highly interconnected web of cloud providers, SaaS applications, identities that all need to be managed and secured in real time. So the kind of legacy approach of this perimeter doesn't really even exist anymore. So we need new solutions and new products to be able to secure this modern web of infrastructure. So at Abstract Security, we're building the industry's first distributed security analytics platform. And the way our product works is you can deploy instances of our product across your web of infrastructure, and we're able to collect and analyze hundreds of thousands of data points across this infrastructure every second. And the reason why this is important is because we're doing detection for our customers in real time. And the sooner that customers can identify and respond to a threat, it makes the impact of a breach much less. We're also able to collect and store this data in an order of magnitude cheaper than what customers are doing today from a security perspective. The other thing that we're working on is an AI analyst, if you will. Think about a virtual analyst in the product who can actually help our users decipher all this cloud technology that their companies have, all these SaaS providers understand the data that's coming out of them, and our AI is also going to be able to help these customers build a detection strategy so to help them even know what they need to look for across this web of infrastructure. So this is what we're focused on. A little bit about the company. We started earlier this year. We've gone through a pre-seed and a seed round of fundraising. With that money, we've just recently built out our early engineering team. Very happy to get that done. And we are looking to install with our initial set of design partners this month, actually. Next year, we'll launch the company and the product more formally. I'm very fortunate to be part of an experienced founding team. We've been building and selling security software to enterprises our entire careers. I myself am located here in San Luis Obispo, and my co-founder and CEO, Colby Dorotif, is located just up the street in Paso. So that's all for me. If you're interested in perhaps becoming a design partner in our product and helping really shape the future of the product, or you're interested in learning more, please contact me, Ryan at abstract.security. Thank you for your time.
Hello, everyone. I'm so honored to be here. My name is Penny Lane Case, and I'm the proud co-founder and CEO of Nexstera Tech, where we are ensuring the future of waste management safety. We live in the age of technology, where battery-powered devices literally power our lives. But what happens when we replace these devices? Unfortunately, they often end up in our blue curbside bin. That's because batteries have this rhetoric that they are recyclable, but that's only at certified battery recyclers. Or they're encased in paper or plastic, which is universally recognized as recyclable material. But when you're tossing out your old electric toothbrush, or your remote controller, or even your kid's musical toy, what you're really throwing away is a lithium-ion battery. And lithium-ion batteries are classified as hazardous material, and it is illegal to dispose of them in any of your curbside bins. That's because when they enter the waste stream, they have the opportunity to be punctured or crushed, and a single lithium-ion battery can cause a fire, like at Penn Waste just last year, of over $36 million in damages and a year of downtime, not to mention all of the lives that were threatened, the lost resources, and the environmental contamination. Unfortunately, this is not a one-off event. It actually happens all the time. It's so common that it equates to over $1.2 billion in damages in the US and Canada alone every single year. That's crazy, and nobody is doing anything about it yet, which is why there's a massive opportunity for us to come in and make a change. I am proud to present to you Nextera's PyroTac. PyroTac is a dual radar system that seamlessly integrates onto waste hauler vehicles to detect for lithium-ion batteries at the curb before the bin has been dumped, and it is powered by our smart machine learning algorithm. We use radar because we knew we needed to detect at the bin before it had been collected by these collection agencies, and radar has deep detection capabilities along with instantaneous alerts that lets us give these collection facilities the ability to leave the bin at the curb and mitigate the risk altogether. We have already proven out radar's material differentiation capabilities, and now we are collecting thousands of scans to strengthen our machine learning algorithm, which is already at over 70%. Because of this transcendent innovation and this massive and untapped problem, we already have attention from two of the largest waste management companies in the United States. We will be running our beta programs with both WM and Waste Connections over the next year, and we are incredibly excited. But none of this matters without the right team. I am a business entrepreneur, and I just graduated from Cal Poly in June, and I work alongside Kylene Landenberger, who is a computer engineer and is our director of software, and Stephanie James, who is a mechanical engineer and my co-founder and CTO. We're all at Cal Poly, we're all local, and we love San Luis Obispo. Woo! But none of this would be possible without our incredible support system. We have a board of mentors and advisors that range from industry experts to business development to financial to legal, and we truly would not be where we are without them. We know that the future is safe, sustainable, and responsible e-waste, and we want to be a part of that future. With your help, we can be. We are currently fundraising, so if you are interested in learning more, I would love to talk with you after, or if you just want to stay in touch, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you all very much. I, again, am so honored and excited to be here, and I hope that I get to meet each and every one of you on our journey forward. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Andrew DeMille. I'm COO and co-founder of Quantum Energy, Inc., where we're bringing new data-driven insights to energy decision makers that maximize the financial outcomes of these energy investments while also optimizing for the health of you, me, our children, and our planet for the first time. Deploying more renewable energy right now is critical. It's critical to meet growing electricity demands. It's critical to meet new carbon-related regulations and to reduce the burden of our current fossil fuel-centric energy system. But most of these projects are not happening, 79% in fact. Why is that? Well, communities are often locked in a heated debate. On one hand, you've got tremendous economic development potential, new green jobs into the future, and on the other, legitimate environmental concerns. But the reality is that the impacts of these projects, both positive and negative, are far more nuanced than that. The vast majority of impacts from renewable projects does not come from the physical projects themselves. It comes from their potential to offset coal and natural gas. Now, these fossil fuel emissions have tremendous toxic impacts far beyond the carbon emissions that we hear so much about. Emissions that cause asthma, cancers, premature death, air pollution, water pollution, biodiversity loss, and more. And these are not being included in the energy decision making today. This is almost like trying to manage our diets. This is like if we're managing our diets based on calorie counts alone, right? We're missing the impacts of these projects. So energy needs a nutrition label that quantifies these avoided emissions, predicts them, and it quantifies the full picture of impacts that are impacting public health, ecosystems, and our economy. That's why our CEO, Dr. Daniel Howard, has spent years developing the sophisticated modeling capabilities of the Total View Energy platform, making it fast and affordable through a subscription software service to bring this type of sophisticated data to the fingertips of decision makers, aligned communities to get the right projects done faster. We've been funded by the National Science Foundation, recently winning over $250,000 in grant funding. Amazing. We've done collaborations with some of the most prestigious science organizations in the world and have venture backing from Cerulean. They're amazing. So let me give you an example of what we actually do. We were recently hired by the largest renewable energy project in the country, 2.8 gigawatts of wind, solar, and energy storage located in Flagstaff, Arizona. Now, half of this project is already permitted in construction. The other half, it's in that debate. So we use the Total View platform to find out what would happen if this full project made it to life. The increase in solar and wind will offset 5.5% of coal generation and 11% of natural gas. Now, this may not seem like a big deal, but across the entire power market of the Southwest, this is huge. Let me show you a few highlights of the impacts that we found using Total View. Nearly 10,000 years of human life saved annually. 10 local species saved due to reduced emissions annually. And $1.8 billion in previously unquantified economy-wide savings from these avoided emissions. Let's bring this home. How many of you feel a certain way about the offshore wind being proposed at Morro Bay? Okay. I'm with you. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm conflicted. On one hand, we're estimating over $250 million in economic development potential, hundreds, maybe thousands of long-term green jobs into our future. We need that. And on the other hand, we love our beaches, this pristine coastline, this quaint community that we have. I love the whales. But the reality is, without this data, none of us have a full picture of insights and trade-offs to make informed decisions that impact our health and our livelihoods into our future here on the Central Coast and beyond. This is the quantum leap in energy decision-making. I'm Andrew DeMille. If there's anything I can do to support any of you here with our energy future, I'm here for you. Thank you so much.
All right, let's hear it one more time for all three of our entrepreneurs. That was fantastic. Do me a favor, folks. We're going to move quickly through this. Take out your cell phones. I will be your technical guide for what we're about to do. All three of our entrepreneurs represent worthy projects, worthy businesses, endeavors on the Central. Only one of them gets to win today. Only one of them walks home with the $5,000 prize, and you get to decide who that is. So pull out your phones. We're going to bring up a phone number up on the screen. No, we're not. I'm going to read that phone number to you. The phone number is 520-829-9817. Again, that's 520-829-9817. Raise your hand if you need me to read that again. Okay, we're good. All right, now you'll notice that you're going to be texting 1 for abstract security, 3 for Nexstream Tech, and 4 for quantum energy. Unfortunately, Zoetic Motion couldn't attend today. I'm pretty sure one of the competitors here slashed their tires to increase the odds of winning, but we don't. Zoetic is not here today. So 1, 3, or 4. Please vote now. And while you're finishing voting, we get to hear from one more of our valuable sponsors, and we're going to hear from PG&E next. Here we go.
Hello, I'm Maureen Zawalik, Vice President at Diablo Canyon Power Plant. We're committed to the safe and reliable operations of California's largest source of clean energy. As we seek to extend our operating license at the request of the state, we're excited about the economic benefits PG&E will continue to contribute to our communities. Diablo Canyon remains SLO County's largest private employer, providing jobs for over 1,300 nuclear professionals as well as 1,200 temporary workers. In the last year, PG&E contributed over $15 million in property taxes benefiting our local schools, gave hundreds of thousands in grants and donations to Central Coast organizations, as well as thousands of volunteer hours. We thank you, SLO County, for your continued support as we proudly deliver safe, clean, and reliable energy.
All right. Thank you, PG&E. Okay, well, on to the main event. We're going to bring Dr. Chris Thornberg back up to the stage to deliver the national economic view. Please welcome Dr. Chris Thornberg.
Oopsie. Oh, those power buttons. Silly. All right. It is great to be back. Part 2, looking ahead. So I already told you a little bit about where we are. There's obviously some interesting dynamics in the local economy, interesting dynamics in the state economy. But where are we heading? And to understand that, of course, we have to understand the broad picture. The ultimate picture, you think about all this conversation about a recession over the last year, is built on top of really a decade of nonstop conversations about the next recession, whether it was in 2019 or 2016. And of course, we're not talking about the next recession. What are we talking about? We're talking about how terrible the expansion is. Age of secular stagnation. American middle class hasn't gotten a raise in 15 years, so on and so forth. Well, you know what I call this, right? Well, James does. His quote was, I can hear Dr. Thornberg already saying miserableism is alive and well. The more I hear it, the more I see it, right? And I'm glad he acknowledged that particular thing. I've obviously talked quite a bit about miserableism over the years. But I want to go off topic just a little bit on this and talk a little bit about why. Because, I've introduced it to you, but we haven't talked about the underpinnings of it. And I think there's an interesting conversation to be had there. Now, in terms of sort of my reading on this, I've been diving into a lot of behavioral economics. And one of the most profound books out there is called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. To give you a level of this guy's intellectual abilities, he is a psychologist by training who's won the Nobel Prize in economics. This guy is top. And this book was enormously influential in so many parts of economics and other social sciences. And what he points out in this book is something I think that economists kind of had a sense of, but he really defined and teased apart and made us understand how it works. And that boils down to this. Human beings don't have one way of thinking. We, in fact, have two ways of thinking. It's a little simplistic, but it works very well. And the way to think about it is we have our old system, that is to say, the pre-human system, our lizard brain, as the case may be, which is emotional, right? Our type 1 system. It's fast, it's instinctual, it's built on millions of years of evolution. You want to see a type 1 system in play, just watch your cat. Put a string in front of your cat. Watch the type 1 system just go crazy, right? But that isn't, of course, our only way of thinking. There's something that makes us intrinsically human. Our ability, of course, to figure out everything from quantum mechanics to how to get a wine cork out of a bottle without a corkscrew. This, of course, all boils down to the type 2 system of thought. It's slower, it's deliberative, it's logical. This is where we can plumb, again, the secrets of the universe, right? Now, here's the issue. Type 2 is what makes us smart. It's what makes us able to take things apart. But type 2 is also expensive. It's exhausting. Anybody who sat down for a couple hours trying to do your taxes know what I'm talking about. After 2 hours, you feel like you just ran a marathon, right? And you haven't moved. Why? Because when that type 2 system goes off, it just takes an enormous amount of energy, enormous amount of concentration. We just don't have that much energy, right? So it's a system we have to use sparingly at some level. Well, here's the big thing. System 1 is gullible and biased to believe. It's biased to believe. Because remember, it's the thing that's supposed to warn us that we're about to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, right? So what takes up signals and immediately runs with it. System 2 is in charge of doubting and unbelieving. But because it's so expensive, System 2 is sometimes busy and very often just flat out lazy. Now, the problem then is that more often than any of us would like to acknowledge is we allow our System 1 to interpret the world around us, Even if you want to think your System 2 is operating, too often it's System 1 that's pulling things forward. And the problem with System 1, because it's fast, because it's instinctual, it is also full of bugs. cognitive biases. And there's hordes of cognitive bias. You can go to Wikipedia, put in cognitive bias, and there'll be 6 times as many as even this brief list of the various types of cognitive bias. But as opposed to explaining to you what a cognitive bias is, I want to demonstrate it. It's a really good way of thinking of it. And let's think of it this way. We have cognitive biases in many systems of our brain. Can someone give me a little water? And I'm like, I should not have eaten that muffin before I got on stage. He's calling my name and I'm shoving a muffin in my mouth. Thank you very much. All right. Much better, much better. Except for the slope here is very dangerous. Okay. So a great example of cognitive bias is what we call an optical illusion, right? So let's take a look at this picture right here. And the question is very simple. Are the horizontal lines parallel? If you're able to read that question, because I expanded it out moving the text. And, okay, what's the answer? What do you guys, are they parallel? That's your type 2. You're shaking your head yes. You're like, of course they're parallel, because you wouldn't have asked that question otherwise. That's type 2, right? But turn off type 2 for just a second. Are they parallel? No. That's a cognitive bias, folks. Here's another one. This is not a movie. It's not a GIF. But if you look at that thing's moving, right? Now, your type 2 system, we figured out, well, it's interesting. It's how you put those shading and the white in there, and it makes, I get all that. But you've got to understand that type 1 system instinctually sees motion here. That is a cognitive bias. Now, take that cognitive bias and apply it to every part of your brain, and you suddenly start to realize how we can misinterpret what's going on around us. And it happens in all sorts of different ways. And miserabilism is a function of this. It's our type 1 brain kicking off. And of course, if you go back a couple of years ago, it was miserabilism that drove the craziness in terms of policy and reaction to the pandemic. Remember, for the last 15 years, no matter how good the news is, somebody out there is telling us how terrible and tragic it is. And that, of course, it just blew up spectacularly when the pandemic showed up on our shores. There's little doubt the pandemic was a tragic human circumstance. Millions of people passed. We were stuck inside for a year. It was a truly scary time. But all those ridiculous predictions were not going to come true. It was not a depression-causing event. That was nonsensical. And let me just give you a context of this. In the second quarter, from the first to second quarter of 2020, we did have a scary moment. The economy declined by 10% in one quarter. We have never seen anything like that before, ever. I get it. It was scary. But at the same time, as much as it was the deepest recession ever, it was the shortest recession ever. Okay? 8 weeks. That's it. Bottom, top, boom, that's it. And we started ricocheting back. The third quarter, an enormous growth surge, and within a year and a quarter, we were back to normal levels of output. So put that in your mind. A year and a quarter from beginning end of that particular business cycle. 8 weeks down, a little over a year back, that's it. The Great Recession had a longer downturn than this entire business cycle. It was 6 quarters from the start of the Great Recession to the bottom, and then it was 7 years to recover. That was a far more dangerous, difficult period of time for our economy. It's as simple as that. But again, don't let reality intrude on a good narrative. The narrative, the type 1 thinking that goes on D.C., because there is no type 2 thinking in Washington, D.C. It is all type 1, folks, okay? They took that narrative and they ran with it. Actual lost GDP, $1.2 trillion. Response to that, $6 trillion in debt-driven stimulus. That is $5 of stimulus for every dollar of lost income, or $50,000 for every single household. That was your return for being stuck inside for a year. You got a $50,000 check. Courtesy Congress, well, not quite courtesy Congress, more like courtesy Jerome Powell. Because Congress did not have $6 trillion to shell out. Had they gone to the bond markets to borrow that money, they would have blew up the bond markets. All debt levels in the United States in 2019 expanded by $3.5 trillion. If Congress had tried to borrow $3 trillion in 2020, $3 trillion more in 2021, a 10-year bond rate would have been 43%, and they still wouldn't have sold all those securities. But they didn't have to do that. They rolled down the street to the formerly independent institution known as the Federal Reserve, and they said, we need money, and Jerome Powell said, how much? Now, it's not supposed to work that way. In the 1950s, they made the Federal Reserve an independent institution because the Federal Reserve is supposed to respond to data, not narratives. But 20 years ago, that came to a shrieking halt. The entire institution has been politicized, and now the folks who run the Federal Reserve are politicians who respond to narratives. And I get that. Again, you have to respond to narratives. That's part of it. Narratives are as important as the data or the combination of the two. And in politics, you have to work with the narrative. But that should not be the same at the Federal Reserve. But again, it's done. And lo and behold, Jerome Powell ran to the rescue. They said, we need money. He said, how much? They said, $5 trillion. He said, done. $5 trillion in brand new cash to pay for that $6 trillion in stimulus. Brand new money, just printed up, of course, through the process of quantitative easing. They lobbed that money at the economy, and because we didn't have an actual crisis, we didn't have a financial crisis, only thing they actually ended up doing was setting off the single largest surge of money supply growth we've ever seen in this nation. Now, what happens when you throw too much money at the economy? Yet again, Type 2 figured this out a long time ago. Type 1, still not sure. Type 2 figured it out, okay? Type 2 I'm talking about is Milton Friedman. What he said, you throw that much money at the economy, first thing that happens, money illusion kicks in. People feel rich. What do you do when you're rich? Well, you invest and you spend. By investing, asset prices go up, which, by the way, makes the wealth effect even that much more intensive. And, of course, interest rates come down. And, of course, the economy takes off. It feels good. But remember, money illusion. Critical word, illusion. It's not real wealth. Real wealth is determined by skills, infrastructure, institutions, credit markets, labor, all that kind of basic stuff that allows us to produce real goods and services. Giving everybody $50,000 doesn't change the inherent productivity of an economy. You've just pushed demand beyond the ability for the economy to meet that demand. And, of course, when there's more demand than supply, prices go up, inflation kicks in, and everything starts to unwind. Asset prices should come back down. Should. We'll come back to that in a second. Inflation, obviously, prices are going up, interest rates go up, spending subsides back to normal. Does it cause a recession? Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. Because inflation is driven by excessive demand. Excessive demand does not cause recessions. We've never had an inflation-driven recession. Now, we had a recession in 1980 and 1982, but that was caused by the cure for inflation. Let that one ring in your brain just for a couple minutes, okay? Now, why did Milton Friedman call this money mischief back in the day? Well, because while it's not a short-run situation, it's not a short-run issue, it is a long-run issue. Why? Well, first of all, when you're printing up brand new dollars and funneling it around, you're going to have winners and losers. The people who get the money are the winners. The people who don't get the inflation anyway, and they are the losers. This creates political strife. It is hard to invest. It is hard to save. It is hard to plan your businesses in a highly volatile price environment. How do you measure things? It becomes complicated. So you have a decline in real investment. And overall, you have a decline in real growth rate. The economy becomes brittle. In other words, you don't really want to do this. That's why I called the book Money Mischief. Now, we did it anyway, and it's important to understand that the most of the money they lobbed out when the $6 trillion hit that economy, a lot of it trickled into the bottom 50%, unlike the last two big wealth bubbles we've had. And that's almost assuredly one of the reasons why inflation kicked off so rapidly this time. The bottom 50%, you put more money into that part of the population, it quickly turns into demand, and that quickly turns into price increases. So it is obvious that this is a bottom-up push on prices, unless, of course, you pick up a paper where you hear over and over how inflation is hurting Americans. I mean, take a look at this. This came out at the end of last year. 85% of Americans are feeling the impact of inflation in day-to-day survey, right? And just pick out the second bullet. Similar number, 88% said inflation has impacted their spending on restaurants. I already showed you the data. Restaurant spending is 38% higher than it was before the pandemic. Apparently, inflation is causing people to eat out more, right? What is going on? It's just preposterous, the things we say, right? Inflation is caused by too much money chasing after too few goods, period. And, of course, you can see this in the gasoline. I brought this up last year, but I just keep using it because it's such a powerful illustration of what's going on here and how these folks get to our Type 1 systems, right? Gas prices went up by 50% at the start of 2022. In 6 months, 50%. Oh, and the hand-wringing and the pearl-clutching and the white knuckles. People can't feed their kids. They're not going to be able to buy prescription drugs. Right? But again, stop. If this was just a supply effect caused by Putin invading Ukraine and there was a 50% increase in prices, people are going to pull back on gasoline spending, right? After all, it's expensive. So what happened? 50% increase in gasoline prices. Actual consumption of gasoline went down by consumers by 1.5%. That's it. By the way, that's demand, not supply driving that price increase. Obviously, it's because people didn't care. And we all had to deal with the news story where they walk up to this guy in the gas station, and they put a camera in his face, and they go, hey, how do you feel about filling up your tank? How do you feel? Right? Because we all know that's the important thing. How do you feel? Well, I tell you what. I rolled into this gas station expecting to spend $80 to fill up my tank, and it cost me $120. I'd say I feel annoyed. That's human, people. That's how it works. I don't care if you're a millionaire or living on welfare. You're annoyed. And that's what he's going to say. There's no news there. It's not a worthy question. Where's my, there you are. You're hearing me here? All right? All right? I don't want to hear any more how do you feel questions in the Central Coast Business Times, all right? No more of that. What should you ask him? What's the right question to ask? Where are you going? If the answer is, I'm taking the boys down to the lake to check out the new boat, you clearly don't care about the price of gas, do you? You clearly don't. That is how it works. Now, of course, gas prices are going up again, but again, it doesn't matter. Because energy as a share of consumer spending is low. People are just going to keep buying it. Now, by the way, that's bad news if you're a farmer, because they're going to push up the price of gasoline, which pushes up the price of oil, which pushes up the price of fertilizers. So it does spill over into the industrial side of things, but it comes from strong consumer demand. Simple as that. The other reason we don't have to worry about it is, back in the day when they had these problems, we had to spend more money on gasoline. It went to Saudi Arabia. Well, now it goes to Texas because we have record high oil production. Oh, that's not good news, is it? Never mind. All right, moving on. So in any case, it's all the conversation about consumers and them getting hit by inflation is completely false. It's the wrong narrative. But, of course, we love to hear how our lives are difficult, right? We all want to be told how woe is us. That is our inherent inclination. Right? And so even if we've seen these strong numbers, we keep coming up with reasons why any day now it's going to come to an end. After all, savings rates are down. Disposable incomes are being hurt by inflation. And people are running out of savings. I just love this. You have these papers like counting savings. They're going to run off the savings cliff any minute now. Trust me. Right? Everybody wants to turn this into a big story about people are running out of money. It's not about income. It's about wealth. $6 trillion in stimulus turned into $35 trillion of brand new house worth because asset markets just fed it all back. Home prices went up. Stock market went up. And by the way, they keep going up. This is one of the biggest surprises in the data I've seen. I anticipated last year more capitulation in asset prices, hence more capitulation in the pace of construction. I missed that completely. I was optimistic about the economy. I was oddly under-optimistic about the economy, but that's because with asset prices coming back, people are still sitting on piles of net worth. It's 32% above where it was 4 years ago. And don't even count that. Just look at cash on hand. Prior to the pandemic, all American households had $1 trillion cash on hand. Right now, they have $4 trillion cash on hand sitting in their checking accounts. 4 times what it was 4 years ago. Yeah, they can afford a few extra bucks at the pump.